Blood trails in the snow. Each crimson drop marks Sarah Mitchell's desperate flight through the Dakota wilderness, her infant daughter clutched against her breast. The knife wound in her side burns with every step, but she can't stop, not with her husband's angry shouts still echoing in her nightmares. 3 days without food, her milk running dry, and now the winter storm howls like the wolves circling ever closer. She stumbles, falls. Her baby's cry pierces the gathering darkness. This is how it ends, she thinks, until a shadow materializes. From the swirling snow, a Lakota warrior, his obsidian eyes locked on hers, bow drawn. Their worlds collide in this moment, bitter enemies forced to choose between ancient hatreds and something far more dangerous: trust. But in a land where every choice can mean death, what price will they pay for following their hearts? Sarah's frozen fingers clutch the gold band on her necklace, her wedding ring, its perfect circle marred by a telling dent. 6 months ago, that dent had been pressed into the metal when William's fist came down on her hand at the dinner table. She'd been reaching for the salt. The memory of that night flooded back as she huddled against the bark of a massive oak, her baby Emma finally quiet against her chest. William's rage over the soup being too bland, the way his knuckles had whitened around his spoon before the first blow, how their wedding ring, the symbol of their love, had become permanently scarred, just like her soul. It hadn't always been this way. William Mitchell had courted her properly, appearing every Sunday at her father's general store in Bismarck with freshly polished boots and careful manners. He'd brought chocolates wrapped in paper from Chicago, spoke of dreams to build an empire. In the Dakota territory, her father had been impressed by the young businessman's ambition, his growing influence in the territory. "A man like that could provide for you," her father had said, eyes gleaming with approval. "Could give you the life your mother would have wanted for you." Sarah had been 19, still grieving her mother's death from consumption. William's steady presence, his promises of security and devotion, had seemed like salvation. The wedding was small but proper, held in the newly built Methodist church. She'd worn her mother's lace veil and believed in forever. The first year had been not happy exactly, but peaceful. William's temper showed itself in small ways, sharp words. When dinner was late, a grip too tight on her arm when she spoke to other men in town. She'd learned to be careful, to anticipate his moods. When she became pregnant, she prayed the baby would soften him. Instead, Emma's birth 8 months ago had only made him worse. The baby's cries seemed to pierce something dark in him. He'd strike Sarah for not quieting the child fast enough, then apologize with expensive gifts and tears. Each time, he swore it would never happen again. Each time, it did. Last week, he'd come home drunk from a failed business meeting. Emma had been colicky all day, her wails echoing through their fine house on the hill. Sarah had been singing softly, trying to soothe her, when William burst in. "Shut that brat up!" he'd roared, grabbing for Emma. Sarah had turned away, shielding their daughter. The knife from his belt had caught her side as they struggled. Not deep, but enough to paint her nightgown crimson. In that moment, seeing her blood on his hands, something in William's eyes had changed. The mask of civilization had slipped entirely. "You're mine," he'd snarled, advancing as she backed away. "The child is mine. Everything here is mine." But she'd been preparing for months, squirreling away supplies in the root cellar, studying maps of the territory. When he lunged again, she was ready. The heavy brass candlestick connected with his temple, and he crumpled. She didn't wait to see if he would rise. Now, 3 days into her flight, Sarah touched the dented ring again. Not as a reminder of love. Lost, there was no love left to mourn, but as a promise to Emma. They would never be owned again, never be less than fully human in anyone's eyes. The Lakota warrior still stood before her, bow drawn, but not yet loosed. His dark eyes took in her wounds, the tight wrap of her shawl around Emma, the desperation in her face. Sarah met his gaze steadily. If death came now, at least it would be quick. At least they would be free. But something shifted in the warrior's expression. The bow lowered slightly. He spoke a word she didn't understand, then touched his chest. "Standing Bear," he said in careful English. Sarah exhaled slowly, hope flickering like a fragile flame. "Sarah," she whispered back, "and this is Emma." The baby stirred, whimpering. Standing Bear's eyes softened at the sound. He gestured toward the darkening woods, then touched his own side where her wound still seeped. Help. He was offering help. Sarah looked back the way she'd come, knowing William would never stop hunting them. Then she looked at Standing Bear's extended hand. Trust or death. There was no middle ground. She reached out, took his hand, and chose trust. Standing Bear felt the weight of the eagle feather in his hair as he led the white woman through the gathering dusk. The sacred object had been given to him by his grandfather, the medicine man, with words that now echoed in his mind. "With great power comes great responsibility. You walk between two worlds, grandson. You must honor both." The woman, Sarah, stumbled. Behind him, clutching her child. Her breath came in ragged gasps, but she made no complaint. Blood still seeped from her wound, leaving a trail that would need to be covered. He had seen too many signs of pursuit in the snow not to be cautious. His people called him Matho Najing, Standing Bear, for his steadfast nature. 7 summers ago, he had stood alone against a grizzly to protect a hunting party. The scars across his chest had earned him respect, but it was his skill at reading both the land and men that had made him a scout. He touched the eagle feather again, remembering his grandfather's final teachings before passing to the spirit world. The white man's path crosses ours like thunder crosses the prairie. Some bring destruction, others bring change. You must learn to know the difference. Sarah's baby whimpered, and Standing Bear turned to study them in the fading light. The woman's face was drawn with pain and exhaustion, but her eyes held no deceit. The child, Emma, had his grandmother's coloring, dark eyes curious despite her suffering. His decision to help them would anger many in the tribe, perhaps even Chief Red Cloud himself. But the signs had been clear. That morning he had witnessed an eagle take down a wolf that threatened its nest. Now a mother and child appeared, fleeing a predator's violence. The spirits had set this path before him. "Rest," he said in English, gesturing to a fallen log. "Need check wound." Sarah sank gratefully onto the log, adjusting her grip on Emma. When Standing Bear reached for the child, she hesitated only a moment before allowing him to take her. He cradled the infant with practiced ease, remembering his sister's children, now grown. "You have little ones?" Sarah asked softly, watching him as he settled Emma in a secure nest of his buffalo robe. He shook his head. "Sister's children. I would teach them ways of land." Switching to his native tongue, he spoke gentle words to Emma, who stared up at him with solemn eyes. The baby reached for his eagle feather, tiny fingers grasping at air. "She likes you," Sarah said, managing a weak smile despite her pain. Standing Bear returned Emma to her mother, then knelt to examine Sarah's wound. The knife cut was not deep, but infection would set in without proper care. He pulled dried herbs from his medicine pouch, another gift from his grandfather, and began to prepare a poultice. As he worked, he caught movement in the trees. His hand moved to his knife, but it was only a deer and her fawn, passing silently through the snow. Another sign. The spirits were speaking clearly tonight. "Bad man follow," he said, applying the poultice. "Must walk through night. No safe place." Sarah nodded, her jaw set with determination. "I can walk." Standing Bear studied her face. There was strength there, beneath the fear and exhaustion. Like the deer protecting her fawn, this woman would fight to her last breath for her child. Such courage deserved honor, regardless of the color of her skin. He helped her stand, then shouldered his bow. The trading post was half a day's journey through difficult terrain, but old Joseph who ran it was a friend to his people. The old trapper had lost his own daughter to a violent husband years ago. He would understand. As they set out again, Standing Bear felt the eagle feather brush his shoulder. His grandfather had been right. He walked between two worlds. Tonight, those worlds had collided in the form of a desperate mother and an innocent child. Whatever came next, he would face it with the honor his grandfather had taught him. The moon rose, casting silver light through the bare branches. Behind them, a wolf howled. Closer now. Standing Bear quickened their pace, one hand on his bow, the other supporting Sarah as she stumbled forward. The night would be long, but they would survive it. The spirits had shown him the path. All that remained was the courage to walk it. The abandoned trading post materialized out of the darkness like a ghost, its weathered logs silver in the moonlight. Standing Bear held up one hand, signaling Sarah to wait while he circled the building. No tracks in the fresh snow, no smoke from the chimney. They were alone. Inside, dust lay thick on the empty shelves, but the roof was sound. Sarah sank onto a wooden bench, Emma still bundled against her chest. The baby had been eerily quiet during their journey, as if sensing the need for silence. Standing Bear moved with quiet efficiency, gathering forgotten firewood from beside the pot-bellied stove. Soon, a small flame cast dancing shadows on the walls. In its light, he could see how pale Sarah had become, the sheen of fever on her skin. "Need make better bed for little one," he said, eyeing the way Sarah clutched Emma. "No way of our people." From his pack, he drew strips of supple deer skin and 2 flexible willow branches. His hands moved with practiced skill, weaving the materials together. Sarah watched, fascinated, as a cradle began to take shape. "We call this Wapanagin Wakshicha, cradle board," he explained, his voice soft in the firelit darkness. "Keep baby safe, warm, mother can rest." Sarah touched the emerging cradle with trembling fingers. "It's beautiful, but I couldn't take is gift," Standing Bear interrupted firmly. "For Emma." He worked in silence for a time, adding a protective arch over where the baby's face would rest. His grandmother had taught him this craft, insisting that all warriors should know how to nurture life as well as defend it. When the cradle board was complete, he lined it with soft rabbit fur saved from his last hunt. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to Emma. Sarah hesitated only briefly before passing him her daughter. Standing Bear handled the infant with reverence, showing Sarah how to secure her safely in the cradle. Emma fussed only slightly before settling into its warmth. "See, she sleep better now. You can rest, healed." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she watched her daughter sleep peacefully for the first time in days. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Standing Bear nodded, then turned his attention to her wound. The poultice had helped, but infection still threatened. He stoked the fire and set water to boil for fresh herbs. "Why do you help us?" Sarah asked suddenly. "Your people and mine. We're supposed to be enemies." Standing Bear was quiet for a long moment, adding herbs to the heating water. Finally he spoke. "My grandfather teach me. Look with heart, not eyes. Eyes see white. Woman, Indian warrior. Heart see mother protect child. Warrior protect innocent. Same story, different skin." He helped her drink the medicinal tea, then settled her near the fire with his buffalo robe. Taking up his bow, he moved to guard the door. "But your people," Sarah began. "My people believe in signs. Eagle feather guide me. Spirit say help you." He touched the sacred feather in his hair. "Cannot ignore spirit way." Sarah studied him in the firelight. "Your English is very good. Learn at mission school. Learn white man ways to help my people. Now help you." He smiled slightly. "Great Spirit works in strange ways." Outside, a wolf howled again, but more distant now. Emma slept soundly in her cradle board, and Sarah's breathing had begun to ease as the medicine took effect. Standing Bear kept his vigil through the night, watching the moon track across the sky through the trading post's single window. His decision to help them had set him on a dangerous path, but his heart was at peace. The cradle board was more than just a gift. It was a bridge between worlds, a symbol of the trust being built between them. As dawn approached, he began to plan their next move. They would need food, better weapons. Sarah's husband would not give up easily, and the winter woods held many dangers, but for now, in this moment of quiet, he allowed himself to feel the rightness of his choice. The eagle feather brushed his cheek in the pre-dawn breeze. Yes, this was the path the spirits had chosen. Whatever came next, they would face it together. William Mitchell pulled his gold pocket watch from his vest, its polished surface catching the morning light. 6 o'clock. 72 hours since Sarah had struck him, since she'd stolen his child, and fled into the wilderness. His fingers traced the watch's engraved surface, a wedding gift from her father. His grip tightened until the metal bit into his palm. "Mr. Mitchell, sir." Young Jenkins rode up, his horse lathered despite the cold. "We found something." William snapped the watch shut. "Show me." The search party followed Jenkins to a clearing where trampled snow told its story. Blood drops, dark against the white. Small footprints overlapped by larger ones. Moccasin prints. "Indians," spat Thomas Reed, William's foreman. "Savages must have taken them." William studied the signs with cold precision. No signs of struggle. They went willingly. His voice hardened. "Sarah always did have a weakness for the exotic. Looks like she's added red-skinned devils to her list of sins." A mile away, Standing Bear crouched in the snow, reading the morning's tracks. Sarah stood behind him, Emma secure in her cradle board. 6 men, he murmured. 2 good trackers, others city men. He touched a broken twig. "Getting closer." Sarah clutched Emma's cradle board. "William won't stop. He'll never let us go." Standing Bear rose, brushing snow from his leggings. In the day's light, Sarah could see the warrior more clearly, the strength in his features, the intelligence in his dark eyes. He wasn't the savage her husband would see, but a man of dignity and purpose. "Need to split up," he said. "I lead them away. You go north, to my grandmother's." "Camp." "No." Sarah's voice was firm. "We stay together." Standing Bear turned to face her fully. "Is dangerous." More dangerous apart. She met his gaze steadily. "You gave me trust last night. Now I give you mine." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He reached into his medicine pouch and pulled out a small object, a carved wooden fox. "My token," he explained. "Show grandmother. She understand." Sarah tucked the carving carefully into her dress. As she did, a distant voice carried on the wind. Standing Bear's hand went to his bow. "Time to move," he said. "No hidden way through rocks." They traveled swiftly but carefully, Standing Bear choosing paths that would hide their tracks. Emma remained remarkably quiet in her cradleboard, soothed by its gentle swaying. Near midday they paused in a sheltered ravine. Standing Bear shared dried buffalo meat and taught Sarah to eat snow for water without chilling her core. As she ate, she noticed him studying the sky. "Storm coming," he said. "Big one. Could help us. Or kill us," Sarah added quietly. Standing Bear nodded, respecting her understanding of their situation. "Must reach grandmother before storm. She teach many winters. No ways to survive." A gunshot cracked through the air, startlingly close. Birds erupted from nearby trees. Standing Bear moved like lightning, pressing Sarah and Emma against the ravine wall, shielding them with his body. Sarah could feel his heart beating steadily despite the danger. He smelled of wood smoke and leather, so different from William's cologne and whiskey. "They split up," he whispered. "Hunting in pairs now." His breath was warm against her cheek. "Must be very quiet, very fast." Sarah nodded, suddenly acutely, aware of their proximity. Standing Bear's eyes met hers, something unspoken passing between them. Then he drew back, checking Emma's bindings with gentle hands. Ready? Ready. They moved deeper into the wilderness as the storm clouds gathered above them. Behind them, William consulted his pocket watch again, its steady ticking counting down to a confrontation none of them could avoid. But for now, in this moment between pursuit and storm, Sarah felt an unfamiliar sensation, hope. With each step away from her old life, each moment understanding Bear's protection, she was becoming someone new, someone stronger. Emma cooed softly in her cradleboard, reaching for a snowflake. Standing, Bear smiled at the sound, and Sarah felt her heart skip. This man who had every reason to be her enemy had become something else entirely, something she wasn't ready to name, but couldn't deny. The storm was coming. William was coming. But they would face it together. The medicine woman's teepee stood, apart from the others, marked by prayer flags that whipped in the strengthening wind. Standing, Bear led Sarah to its entrance, just as the first heavy snowflakes began to fall. Emma had grown feverish during their final hours of travel, her small face flushed despite the cold. "Grandmother," Standing Bear called softly in Lakota, "I seek your wisdom." The hide flap opened, revealing an elderly woman with eyes as sharp as obsidian. She took in Sarah and Emma with one penetrating glance, then looked to her grandson. "So, you bring us trouble, Matho Najing. I bring those who need help, grandmother." The old woman's face softened as Emma whimpered, "Bring the child inside, quickly." Inside the teepee, warmth from a small fire wrapped around them. The air was fragrant with drying herbs and sage. Standing Bear's grandmother, who Sarah would learn, was called Singing Crow, moved with surprising agility for her age, pulling a worn leather pouch from among her belongings. "This medicine bag," she explained in careful English, "hold healing of many generations. My grandmother teach me. Her grandmother teach her." She opened the bag, revealing bundles of dried plants, crystals, and small bones. "Now I teach you," Sarah watched, fascinated, as Singing Crow selected different herbs, explaining each one's purpose. The old woman's weathered hands moved with certainty, mixing a tea for Emma's fever. "Your milk is troubled," Singing Crow said, studying Sarah. "Fear makes it weak. Baby feels mother's fear." Sarah touched her breast self-consciously. "I haven't been able to feed her properly since we fled." Singing Crow nodded, already pulling more herbs from her bag. "This help milk flow, this calm spirit." She pressed 2 bundles into Sarah's hands. "Tea for both, 3 times each day." As they worked to lower Emma's fever, Singing Crow began to sing softly, a melody that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Standing Bear joined her, his deeper voice weaving through hers. Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes at the beauty of it. "Is healing song," Standing Bear explained during a pause. "Ask spirits to make baby strong." Emma's fever began to break under Singing Crow's ministrations. The old woman smiled as she placed a small leather pouch around the baby's neck. "Protection medicine," she said. "Keep bad spirits away." Sarah touched the pouch gently. "Thank you, I don't know how to repay such kindness." Singing Crow's eyes crinkled. "You learn our ways. Teach child both paths. Is payment enough?" A commotion outside interrupted them. Standing Bear moved to the teepee's entrance, hand on his knife, but it was only a young boy, breathless with running. "White men," he gasped in Lakota. "At the winter hunting camp." Standing Bear turned to Sarah, his face grave. "Your husband found our trail." Singing Crow was already moving, gathering supplies into a larger medicine bag. "Take this," she said, pressing it into Sarah's hands. "Go to summer camping grounds. I slow them down." "Grandmother?" Standing Bear began. "No argument," she cut him off. "I am too old to fear white man's anger. Besides," she smiled slyly, "who suspects old woman of helping fugitives?" She turned to Sarah, taking her face between weathered palms. "You have warrior's heart, white daughter. Trust it." Her eyes moved to Standing Bear. "And trust him. Spirits brought you together for purpose." Outside, the storm was building. Singing Crow helped Sarah secure Emma, now sleeping peacefully, into her cradle board. The old woman's medicines had worked miracles. "Remember tea," she instructed, 3 times each day. "Sing to spirits. They listen, no matter what color skin." Asks. As they prepared to leave, Singing Crow pressed one final bundle into Standing Bear's hands. "Your grandfather's special medicine," she said in Lakota, "for when heart and duty conflict." Standing Bear tucked the bundle away, embracing his grandmother. Sarah saw tears in his eyes as he pulled back. "Go," Singing Crow commanded. "I keep warm welcome for hunters who follow." The gleam in her eyes suggested that welcome would be anything but warm. As they slipped away into the storm, Sarah glanced back to see the old woman settling by her fire, humming peacefully as she sorted through her medicine bag. Sarah clutched her own medicine bag close, feeling the power of generations of healing within it. In just a few hours, Singing Crow had given her more than medicine. She had given her belonging. Sarah's feet had gone numb hours ago, her city boots worthless against the deep snow. When she stumbled for the 3rd time, Standing Bear called. A halt beneath a stand of pine trees. "No good," he said, examining her feet. "Need proper shoes for winter walking." From his pack, he pulled out a pair of moccasins, beautifully beaded with blue and white designs. "Was bringing to trade. Now yours." Sarah stared at the craftsmanship. "I couldn't." "Dead feet help no one," he said firmly, "especially not Emma." He helped her remove her sodden boots, quickly wrapping her feet in rabbit fur before sliding the moccasins on. The difference was immediate. Warmth returned to her toes, and she could feel the ground beneath her feet in a way her rigid boots had. "Never allowed. Walking different in these," Standing Bear explained. "Must learn new way." He demonstrated, showing her how to place her weight, how to read the snow's depth before stepping. "Land speaks. You listen with feet now." Sarah practiced, discovering a grace she'd never known she possessed. Emma watched from her cradleboard, secured on Standing Bear's back, occasionally letting out happy gurgles that made them both smile. "She grows stronger," Standing Bear observed. "Grandmother's medicine good." Sarah nodded, following his tracks through the snow. "Everything about her is stronger here. She never laughed like this before." They walked in comfortable silence until, reaching a frozen stream, Standing Bear taught her to check ice thickness, to find safe crossing points. His hands were gentle, but sure as he guided her steps. "William never taught me anything," Sarah found herself saying. "He wanted me helpless, dependent." Standing Bear's face darkened. "Man who keeps eagle in cage does not love eagle, only loves that eagle cannot fly away." "And now?" Sarah asked softly. "Am I learning to fly?" His eyes met hers, intense and warm. "You already flying, just learning to trust your wings." The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken things. Emma broke it with a hungry cry. Sarah moved to take her, but Standing Bear was already unfastening the cradleboard with practiced ease. "Time for medicine tea," he said, setting up a small camp. "Need rest anyway. Long walk still ahead." As Sarah fed Emma and drank Singing Crow's tea, Standing Bear taught her to read the weather in the clouds, to spot game trails in the snow. Every lesson was a gift of independence, a key to survival. "Tell me about your people's winter celebrations," Sarah asked, as they shared dried meat and berries. Standing Bear's face lit up as he described the ceremonies, the stories told around fires, the dances that kept spirits high through the darkest months. His English flowed more freely as he spoke of things he loved. "Would you teach Emma these stories?" Sarah asked. "I want her to know both worlds." Something shifted in Standing Bear's expression. Surprise, then a deeper emotion she wasn't ready to name. "Would teach both of you," he said quietly. Sarah looked down at her moccasins, at how naturally they now felt on her feet. She was changing, becoming someone new with each step into this world. The woman who had lived in fear in a fine house on the hill felt like a stranger now. Your feet learn quick, Standing Bear observed, packing up their small camp. Heart learning. Quick too. Is that good or bad? He helped her rise, his hand lingering on hers. Depends on what heart learning. Sarah felt warmth flood her cheeks, and not from the exertion. Before she could respond, a wolf's howl echoed through the trees, closer than any they'd heard before. Standing Bear's expression turned serious. Storm coming soon, big one. Need better shelter. He secured Emma's cradleboard to his back. No? Place ahead, old cave, hidden. We make it by nightfall if hurry. As they set off again, Sarah found herself moving with new confidence in her moccasins. Each step was a choice, away from William's world of rigid control, towards something wild. And free and frightening in its possibility. Behind them, the wolf howled again. But this time, Sarah heard it differently. Not as a threat, but as another voice of the wilderness that was becoming her home. The cave Standing Bear had spoken of was more than shelter. It was a sanctuary. Ancient pictographs decorated its walls, telling stories of hunts and visions from centuries past. Sarah sat near the small fire, Emma sleeping peacefully beside her, when Standing Bear returned from scouting with a torn piece of paper in his hand. Found in trading post, he said grimly, holding it out to her. Sarah's hands trembled as she read the wanted poster. Her own face stared back at her, drawn with uncomfortable accuracy. The reward offered for her return, dead or alive, made her blood run cold. Wanted for theft, assault, and kidnapping Sarah Mitchell and infant $500 reward property of William Mitchell. Warning. May be in company of hostile Indians. The word property burned in her vision. Standing, Bear knelt beside her as she crumpled the poster. Many copies, he said, softly. Young Hawk saw them, rode all morning to warn us. Young Hawk. Scout from my band, loyal but others. He hesitated. Not all my people happy I help white woman. Some say risk too great. Sarah stared into the fire. They're right. I've brought danger to all of you. Look at me, Standing Bear commanded. When she did, his eyes held such intensity that her breath caught. My choice to help, my honor to protect, no regret. A cry echoed from the cave's entrance, Emma awakening. But before Sarah could move, a figure appeared in the firelight. Running Fox, one of the younger warriors from Standing Bear's band, his face twisted with contempt. Found you, he spat in Lakota. The whole territory searches for this white woman, and you hide her like a coward. Standing Bear rose slowly. Brother, this is not what you think. I am not your brother. Running Fox switched to broken English, glaring at Sarah. White man offer much money. Why you protect her? She bring death to our people. Emma began to wail in earnest. Sarah moved to shield her, but Running Fox was faster, grabbing her arm roughly. What happened next seemed to unfold. In slow motion, Standing Bear's hand caught Running Fox's wrist, breaking his grip on Sarah with terrible precision. In one fluid movement, he positioned himself between them. She is under my protection, Standing Bear said, his voice deadly quiet. Touch her. Again you answer to me. The council will hear of this, Running Fox snarled, rubbing his wrist. And her husband's men? They follow your trail even now. You doom us all for white man's woman? Go, Standing Bear commanded. What you do next shows your true heart. For a moment it seemed Running Fox might attack. Instead, he spat on the ground and vanished into the gathering dark. Sarah's legs gave out. Standing Bear caught her before she could fall, lowering her gently beside Emma. The baby's cries softened at her mother's touch. He will tell them, Sarah whispered. Yes, we have to leave. Yes. Standing Bear began gathering their few belongings, but storm coming must wait until... A gunshot cracked outside the cave, startlingly close. Emma screamed. Sarah clutched her daughter, as Standing Bear doused the fire with sand. In the sudden darkness, his hand found hers. Back way out, he whispered, through sacred chambers. Only medicine people know path. But you're not. Grandfather showed me. For time of great need. His thumb brushed across. Her knuckles. This is that time. They moved deeper into the cave, Standing Bear leading them by memory through twisting passages. Emma miraculously had quieted, as if sensing the need for silence. When they paused to rest in a hidden grotto, phosphorescent moss casting a faint blue glow, Sarah found herself trembling, not with fear, but with the overwhelming realization of what Standing Bear had sacrificed for them. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk everything for us?" In answer, he cupped her face in his hands. For a heartbeat time suspended, then his lips found hers in the darkness, gentle but sure. Sarah melted into the kiss, feeling for the first time in her life the difference between possession and passion, between control and care. When they parted, Standing Bear rested his forehead against hers. "That is why," he said simply. Another gunshot echoed through the caves, more distant now. They shared one more look of perfect understanding before gathering Emma and pressing on through the sacred chambers, leaving behind the torn wanted poster. Like a shed skin, a remnant of a life no longer theirs. Dawn found them emerging from the cave system into a hidden valley, where ancient stone spires rose like fingers reaching for the sky. Standing Bear paused at the threshold, pulling a small bundle wrapped in deerskin from his medicine pouch. "Sacred place," he explained, unwrapping the bundle to reveal sage, tobacco, and dried sweetgrass. "Must ask permission to enter." Sarah watched as he created a small offering, his movements precise and reverent. Emma, strapped to her chest, reached toward the sweet-smelling smoke with curious fingers. "She feels it too," Standing Bear said, smiling. "The spirits are strong here." He began to sing softly, words Sarah didn't understand, but felt in her bones. The morning mist swirled around them as if dancing to his voice. When he finished, he took Sarah's hand, guiding it to scatter some of the tobacco. "Offer thanks," he instructed. "In your own way." Sarah closed her eyes, feeling the rough texture of the tobacco leaves. "Thank you," she whispered, to whom she wasn't sure, "for giving us hope, for sending us protection, for—" she glanced at Standing Bear, "for showing me what love should be." He squeezed her hand as she scattered the offering. The wind caught the tobacco, carrying it toward the stone spires in a graceful arc. "Good sign," Standing Bear said. "We welcome here." They made their way down into the valley, where a small spring bubbled up between the rocks. Standing Bear explained that this was one of his people's most sacred sites, where medicine men came for visions and warriors sought guidance before battle. "My grandfather brought me here as boy," he said as they settled near the spring. "Told me I would return when spirits had important task for me." Sarah unwrapped Emma to change her, and the baby immediately rolled onto her stomach, pushing up with surprising strength. "Look!" Sarah gasped. "She's never done that before." Standing Bear knelt beside them. "Strong girl, sacred ground gives strength." He reached out, letting Emma grab his finger. "She ready to crawl soon." The simple domesticity of the moment brought tears to Sarah's eyes. How different this was from William's distant disinterest in their daughter's development. As if reading her thoughts, Standing Bear touched her cheek. "Past is past," he said softly. "Here now, we make new story." He drew out another bundle from his pouch, this one wrapped in red cloth. "Made this while you sleep. Prayer tie for Emma. And—" he revealed a second matching bundle, one for Mother. Sarah accepted the prayer tie with trembling hands. Intricate beadwork decorated the cloth, telling a story she was learning to read. Protection, growth, love. Wear close to heart, he explained. Reminds spirits to watch over you. Will. "They?" Sarah asked. "Even though I'm not of your people." Standing Bear's eyes were soft as he helped her tie the bundle to a leather cord. "Spirits see no color." See only heart. His fingers lingered at her throat. Your heart pure, strong, beautiful. Emma chose that moment to let out a happy squeal, breaking the intensity of the moment. They both laughed as she continued her determined attempts to crawl. Standing Bear built a small fire, brewing Singing Crow's tea. They shared a quiet breakfast, planning their next move. The sacred valley offered protection, but they couldn't stay forever. Summer grounds, 3 days' walk, Standing Bear said, through mountain passes. Hard journey, but hunters not no way. And then he met her eyes. Then we decide. Together. The word held such promise. Sarah watched Emma playing with a smooth stone, totally at peace in this sacred place. Her daughter was thriving in this new world, growing stronger each day, and her own heart, I don't want to go back, she said suddenly, fiercely. Ever. This is where we belong. Standing Bear's answer was to draw her close, his kiss deeper than their first. Emma babbled happily, and Sarah felt the prayer tie warm against her heart. Here, surrounded by ancient stones and new love, she finally understood what it meant to be truly free. But freedom, she was learning, required constant vigilance. Even as they planned their route forward, snow clouds gathered above the valley. The storm that had been threatening for days was finally arriving, bringing with it challenges none of them could foresee. The storm descended with supernatural fury, turning day to twilight. Standing Bear had found them shelter in a narrow cave, just as the first heavy snows began. But now even the buffalo robe he wrapped around them barely kept out the bitter cold. Like spirits angry, he said, adding the last of their firewood to their small flame. Emma, bundled between them, slept fitfully. Are they? Sarah asked. Angry at us? Standing Bear's arm tightened around her. No. Storm brings change. Big change. Coming. He touched the buffalo robe thoughtfully. Last summer, had vision of white buffalo. Rare sign, powerful medicine. Now, understand why. The wind howled outside like 1,000 wolves. Sarah huddled closer, remembering other storms weathered. Alone in her fine house, William's anger matching the thunder. This was different. Here, wrapped in the buffalo robe with Standing Bear and Emma, she felt not trapped but protected. Tell me about the white buffalo, she whispered. Standing Bear's voice took on the rhythm of a storyteller. White buffalo, sacred to my people, brings message from Wakantanka, Great Spirit, appears in times of great change, when old ways and new ways must find peace. His hand found hers beneath the robe. Like us, a particularly fierce gust rattled loose stones at the cave's entrance. Emma startled awake with a cry, but Standing Bear began to hum softly, the same healing song his grandmother had taught them. Sarah joined in, her voice harmonizing naturally with his. Their shared song filled the cave, holding the storm at bay. When Emma settled, Standing Bear spoke again. Buffalo robe special too, from my first hunter's man. Father say use well, will save life one day. He smiled. Father always right. You've saved us in so many ways, Sarah said softly. But I fear we've cost you everything. Your place in the tribe, your future, no. His voice was firm. Found my future here. He touched Emma's cheek, then Sarah's. Some prices worth paying. The storm raged through the day and into night. They shared the last of their pemmican, sipped carefully rationed water, and told stories. Standing Bear taught Sarah more Lakota. Words. She taught him to read English from a scrap of newspaper that had wrapped their food. As Emma slept between them, they spoke of dreams, of a place where they could live in peace, where Emma could grow strong in both cultures, where love might bridge the chasm between their worlds. Could go to Canada, Standing Bear suggested. No people there. Mixed tribes, mixed marriages accepted more. You'd leave your homeland? Sarah asked. For us? In answer, he kissed her, soft and sure. When they parted, his eyes held absolute certainty. Home not place. Home is people. You and Emma. He touched the prayer ties they wore. "You are my home now." The declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Sarah thought of all she'd lost and all she'd found. The fine dresses and social standing seemed worthless now compared to this honest love, this true belonging. "My home too," she whispered back. The storm's fury began to ease near dawn. Standing Bear wrapped the buffalo robe more tightly around Sarah and Emma before moving to check the cave's entrance. Snow had drifted halfway up, but the sky beyond was clearing. "Storm over soon," he said, "but changed everything. Land different. Now, tracks covered." He smiled. Clean start. Sarah understood. The storm had erased their trail, confounding their pursuers. But it had done more than that. In these hours of enforced closeness, something had shifted between them. What had been attraction, admiration, and gratitude had deepened into something profound and unshakable. Standing Bear returned to their embrace, his body warm against hers beneath the buffalo robe. Emma stirred between them, reaching up to touch. "Both their faces with perfect trust, family," Standing Bear said simply. The word echoed in Sarah's heart. Family. Not the rigid structure William had demanded, but something organic and beautiful, something worth fighting for. Outside, the storm's fury diminished to gentle snowfall. Soon, they would need to move on, facing new challenges. But for now, wrapped in the buffalo robe that had saved their lives, they were simply together. Simply home. The summer camp sprawled across the protected valley, dozens of teepees arranged in the sacred circle. At its center, the council lodge stood waiting. Sarah felt every eye upon them as Standing Bear led her and Emma through the camp, past women who paused in their work and warriors who gripped their weapons tighter. Inside the lodge, 7 elders sat in judgment, the sacred peace pipe placed at the center of their circle. Chief Red Cloud's weathered face revealed nothing as Standing Bear stepped forward to speak. "My chiefs, my elders," he began in Lakota, then switched to English for Sarah's benefit. "I bring before you a matter of heart and honor. You bring trouble," one elder countered. "Running Fox tells of white men offering gold for this woman's return, of her husband's anger. Her husband is a monster who would kill both her and this innocent child," Standing Bear replied, his voice steady. "I chose to protect them, as our ways teach us to protect the helpless." Red Cloud lifted the peace pipe, its carved bowl reflecting firelight. "This pipe has witnessed many treaties between our people and the whites. Most have been broken. Why should we trust this woman more than the others?" Sarah stepped forward, Emma secure in her cradle board. She had practiced the formal words with Standing Bear, but now spoke from her heart instead. "I do not ask for trust I haven't earned," she said clearly. "I ask only for the chance to earn it, to learn your ways, to raise my daughter to honor both sides of her heritage." She reached for the medicine bag Singing Crow had given her, displaying the herbs within. "Your medicine woman has taught me. Your warrior has protected me. Your ways have given me and my daughter life when my own people would have seen us dead." Emma chose that moment to babble happily, reaching toward the nearest elder with complete innocence. The old man's stern expression softened slightly. Red Cloud passed the pipe to his right, beginning the formal council. Each elder drew smoke, contemplating the situation. When the pipe returned to Red Cloud, he spoke again. "Standing Bear, you would take responsibility for these whites?" "I would take them as family," Standing Bear replied. "I would make this woman my wife, this child, my daughter by our sacred ways." A murmur ran through the lodge. Marriage between their peoples was rare, often ending in tragedy, but Standing Bear stood tall, his conviction evident in every line of his body. "And you?" Red Cloud fixed Sarah with his penetrating gaze. "You would accept our ways, become Lakota in your heart?" "I already am," Sarah answered. "My old life died the moment I chose freedom. Here I have found not just safety, but belonging, love, purpose." She touched her prayer tie. Your spirits guide me now. Your people are my people. The peace pipe made another round, silence heavy in the lodge. Finally, Red Cloud spoke again. There is wisdom in the mixing of waters, he said slowly. Strong. Rivers are made from many streams, he turned to Standing Bear. But the white man's law will call this kidnapping. They will not stop hunting. Then we will go north, Standing Bear replied, to the Lakota bands in Canada, but we go with our people's blessing or not at all. Red Cloud held the pipe one final time, studying its carvings, generations of tribal history carved into its surface. Our ways teach us that all life is sacred, that the Great Spirit's wisdom comes in many forms. He looked at Emma, then at Sarah and Standing Bear. Perhaps this is such wisdom before us. He stood, touching the pipe to each of their foreheads in blessing. The council accepts your union. Until you journey north, you will have our protection. His eyes held Sarah's. But you must prove yourself every day. Show our people that this trust is not misplaced. Standing Bear's hand found Sarah's, squeezing gently. They had won the tribe's acceptance, but Sarah understood the responsibility that came with it. She would spend the rest of her life proving worthy of this trust. As they left the council lodge, the peace pipe's sweet smoke clung to their clothing, a reminder of promises made and a new life blessed by ancient ways. The path ahead was still dangerous, but now they would walk it with their people's strength behind them. The attack came at dawn. Sarah was gathering herbs with two other women when the first shots rang out. Through the morning mist, she saw them, Williams. Men a dozen strong, rifles raised. Their leader was Thomas Reed, William's foreman. But William himself was nowhere in sight. "Mrs. Mitchell," Reed called out, "your husband wants you home where you belong." The Lakota warriors materialized like shadows, silent, disciplined, surrounding the intruders. Standing Bear stepped forward, unarmed, Emma secure in her cradleboard on his back. Sarah's heart nearly stopped at the sight. "This woman belongs to herself," Standing Bear said clearly. "As does the child." Reed's rifle swung toward him. "Red Devil! Should have known you'd stolen them." "No one stole us." Sarah's voice rang out as she moved to Standing Bear's side. "I chose to leave. I choose to stay." "Chose," Reed spat. "Women don't choose. They obey. Now come home before people get hurt." A rifle cracked. One of William's younger men, hands shaking, had fired wild. The bullet splintered a nearby tree. In the chaos that followed, Sarah saw Standing Bear's teaching in action. The Lakota warriors moved like water, disarming the intruders with precision and skill. No blood was shed. Within moments, William's men stood weaponless, their rifles collected in a pile. Reed reached for his pistol, but Standing Bear was faster. In one fluid motion, he trapped Reed's arm and disarmed him. The foreman's rifle fell, its stock cracking against stone. "You could kill us all," Standing Bear said quietly. "But what would that solve?" He handed Emma to Sarah, then picked up Reed's broken rifle. "Violence breeds violence. We choose different path." Red Cloud emerged from the shadows, his presence commanding attention. "You have violated our lands," he announced. "By our laws, your lives are forfeit." The white men shifted nervously, but Standing Bear spoke again. "Chief, I ask mercy. Let them carry message to William Mitchell." He held up the broken rifle. "Show him what became of his violence. Tell him his wife and child are under our protection. Now, by our laws and his own territory's laws, she has right to choose her path." Sarah stepped forward, Emma cooing softly in her arms. "Tell William I've found my true home. If he pursues us further, he'll face not just the Lakota nation, but the territory courts. I'll testify to every bruise, every broken bone, every terror-filled night. Does he want that story public?" Reed's face twisted. "You'd shame him like that?" "He shamed himself," Sarah replied. "I choose dignity. I choose peace. I choose love." Standing Bear placed the broken rifle in Reed's hands. "Go. Tell him what you saw here. Tell him his violence has no power anymore." Red Cloud nodded slowly. Take your wounded pride and broken weapons. Next time, we may not be so merciful." As William's men gathered their damaged rifles and retreated, Sarah saw something anew in their eyes when they looked at her, respect tinged with fear. She had transformed from possession to power, and they didn't know how to handle that change. Emma reached for Standing Bear, who took her with gentle hands. "Da," she said clearly, her first real word. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Standing Bear's eyes filled with tears of joy, and Sarah felt her own heart expand. This was what William had never understood, that love freely given was stronger than any force of control. The Lakota warriors melted back into the camp, but Sarah knew their victory had changed things. They had faced violence with peace, hatred with dignity. The broken rifle would carry that message back to William, a symbol of his broken power over them. "You knew they would come," she said to Standing Bear later as they watched the sunset. "Together, expected worse," he admitted, "but saw fear in their eyes when they faced us. Not warriors, just men following orders." He smiled. "Sometimes victory is choosing not to fight." Sarah touched her prayer tie, feeling its reassuring warmth. "William won't give up easily." "No," Standing Bear agreed, "but we stronger together than he ever was alone." He kissed her softly. "Besides, Emma has spoken. I am Da now. No power in world can break that bond." Sarah leaned into his embrace, their daughter secure between them. The broken rifle had marked the end of one life and the unshakable beginning of another. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family, with the strength of two cultures and the wisdom of choosing peace over power. The valley opened before them like a dream, split by a river that forked into two paths. Standing Bear withdrew a medallion from his medicine pouch, an ancient piece worn smooth by generations of hands. One side showed the morning star, the other a setting sun. "Grandfather's token," he explained, letting it catch the light. "And times of choosing. Star points way forward. Sun shows way back." Sarah watched Emma toddle along the riverbank, sure-footed in her tiny moccasins. In the month since the confrontation with William's men, their daughter had grown strong, speaking a mix of English and Lakota words, beloved by the entire tribe. "Two traders came from Canada yesterday," Standing Bear said quietly. "Bring news of Lakota camps near Thunder Bay. Say mixed families welcome there. No U.S. Marshals, no bounty hunters." Sarah touched the medallion in his palm. "That's one path." "What's the other?" "Message from Singing Crow. She hear William very sick, drinking much since you leave, his business failing." Standing Bear's eyes were gentle. "Could return, claim his property, his money, give Emma life of comfort." "That's not comfort," Sarah said firmly. "That's a cage." Standing Bear nodded but continued. "Third path also exists. Stay here. Fight William in white man's courts. Some sympathetic judges in territory now could win right to stay." A fish jumped in the river, sending ripples across its surface. Emma pointed excitedly. "Fish, Da, fish!" Standing Bear scooped her up, kissing her dark curls. Sarah watched them together, remembering William's cold distance from their child. No amount of money could replace this love. "The court battle would be ugly," she said slowly. "William would use everything against us. Your race, our love, the tribe's protection. He'd twist it all into something dark." "Yes, but might help other women, show them path to freedom." Sarah considered this. The thought of helping others escape abuse called to her heart, but at what cost to her new family? To the tribe that had taken them in. "Tell me about Thunder Bay," she said. Standing Bear's eyes lit up. "Good hunting, strong people, tribes mix with French traders, make new way of life. Children learn many languages, many ways." He bounced Emma, making her giggle. "Could build home there, live in peace. Would you miss your people?" "My people will always be my people. Distance not change that." He touched her cheek. "But you and Emma are my heart's people now. Where you are happy, I am home." Sarah walked to the river's edge, watching the water split into two paths. The medallion felt heavy with possibility in her hands. She thought of other women trapped in lives like her old one, of the change they could help create by staying and fighting. But then she looked at Emma, so free and joyful, at Standing Bear, who had risked everything for love. Some battles were meant for others to fight. Their victory would be in living well, in raising their daughter to be strong and proud of all her heritage. "I don't need the medallion to choose," she said finally. "Thunder Bay is our path." Standing Bear's smile was like sunrise. "Sure? Life not easy there. No fine houses, no servants. I've learned what matters. Freedom, love, family." She took Emma from his arms, breathing in her sweet scent. "Our daughter will have all three." He pulled them both close, the medallion pressed between their hearts. "When do we leave?" "Soon," Sarah said. "But first I need to write a letter." That evening, as Emma slept in her cradle board, Sarah wrote by firelight. She told her story, the abuse, the escape, the finding of true love and freedom. She wrote of the tribe's wisdom and acceptance, of Standing Bear's gentle strength. The letter would go to the territory newspaper, to be published after they reached Canada. A beacon of hope for other women. A different kind of victory. Standing Bear read the words slowly, practicing his English. "Beautiful truth," he said, "will help others find courage." Sarah sealed the letter and tucked the medallion inside, a gift for the next woman who needed to choose her path. Then she turned to her future, secure in the knowledge that some choices, once made with love, could never be wrong. Dawn mist wreathed the ceremonial grounds as Singing Crow draped the wedding blanket over Sarah's shoulders. The garment told their story in intricate beadwork, traditional Lakota patterns interwoven with European roses, symbols of both cultures united in harmony. "Your old life taught you fear," the medicine woman said, adjusting the blanket's folds. "This new life teaches love. Remember both lessons." Sarah touched the beadwork, feeling the months of work various women had put into its creation. Each bead represented a prayer, a hope, a blessing for their future. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Beauty made from two different things becoming one. Singing Crow smiled. "Like you and my grandson." Outside, drums began their heartbeat rhythm. Emma, dressed in a tiny dress beaded to match Sarah's blanket, clapped her hands in delight. "Ma pretty," she declared in her mixture of English and Lakota. The ceremony combined elements of both worlds. Standing Bear waited beneath an arch of prairie sage and wild roses, wearing his grandfather's ceremonial clothing, but also the clean, white shirt Sarah had made him. Their witnesses included not only the tribe, but also sympathetic traders and settlers from nearby communities, people who had come to respect their love story. Red Cloud began the ceremony in Lakota, then switched to English. "We gather to witness not just the joining of two hearts, but the bridging of two worlds." Standing Bear and Sarah exchanged the traditional gifts. He presented her with a carved pike pole, representing his promise to provide for their family. She gave him a beaded knife sheath, symbolizing her commitment to maintain their home and protect their bond. Then came the modern touches they had chosen to include. Simple gold rings, blessed with sacred herbs, vows spoken in both languages, their words carrying across cultures and traditions. "I choose you," Standing Bear said clearly in English, "as my wife, my partner, my heart's home. I choose you." Sarah responded in careful Lakota, "as my husband, my protector, my soul's peace." The wedding blanket was wrapped around them both as they faced the four directions, accepting blessings from each. Emma was included in the ritual, Standing Bear lifting her into their embrace as the blanket encircled all three of them. "The Great Spirit knows no boundaries of race or custom," Red Cloud declared. "Love speaks its own language." The celebration that followed blended traditions as seamlessly as the blanket's design. Traditional Lakota songs, mixed with fiddle music from the settlers, food from both cultures filled the feast tables. Children played together, unconcerned with the color of their playmates' skin. As the sun set, Standing Bear led Sarah and Emma to the tipi that would be their home until they departed for Canada. The wedding blanket, now belonging to all of them, was spread over their sleeping robes. "Look," he said softly, pointing to a particular pattern in the beadwork. Sarah gasped. There, worked into the design, was a white buffalo, the sacred symbol that had foretold their union. "Your grandmother added that?" "All the women did. They say our love opens new path, shows new way." He touched the design gently. "Maybe they right. Look how many people come today, how many see different way to live." Emma, sleepy from the festivities, curled between them on the wedding blanket. "Love you, Da," she murmured. "Love you, Ma." Sarah felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. This was what William could never understand, that true love created strength, not weakness, that bonds freely chosen were stronger than any chains. Standing Bear brushed away her tears with gentle fingers. "Happy tears? Grateful tears," she corrected, "for every step that led us here, even the painful ones." He nodded, understanding. All paths lead to right now. This moment. Outside, the celebration continued. But in their teepee, wrapped in their wedding blanket with their daughter sleeping peacefully beside them, they had everything they needed. The blanket would travel with them to Canada, would warm other children. They would someday be passed down as a testament to love's power to bridge any divide. Sarah touched the white buffalo design once more. "New paths," she whispered. "New ways," Standing Bear agreed, pulling her close. Together they had woven something as beautiful and strong as the blanket that wrapped them. A love that defied boundaries, that created its own traditions, that showed others what was possible when hearts chose love over fear. William Mitchell arrived alone at dawn, 3 days after the wedding. His expensive suit hung loose on his frame, his eyes wild with drink and desperation. He carried manacles, slave chains he'd bought in Kansas City, their purpose clear in his shaking hands. "Property," he slurred, holding up the chains. "My property. Both of you." Sarah stood her ground at the camp's edge, Standing Bear beside her. Emma was safe behind them with Singing Crow, though her concerned babbling carried on the morning air. "No one owns us," Sarah said clearly. "Not anymore." William's laugh was bitter as winter wind. "Look what they've done to you, dressed like a savage, speaking their devil tongue. Where's my proper wife, my obedient woman?" "She died," Sarah replied. "Under your fists, your boots, your cruel words. A stronger woman rose from those ashes." "Poetic," William spat. "That red devil teach you poetry along with his other savage ways." Standing Bear remained calm, though Sarah felt the tension in his body. Only savage here is man who beats women, who chains what he claims to love. William raised a pistol, its barrel wavering. "You stole them from me." "No." Standing Bear's voice was gentle but firm. "They chose freedom, chose love. Look at chains in your hands, look at gun. These not marks of love. Love," William's laugh turned to coughing. "Love is weakness. Love is chains. Love." His voice broke as Emma's happy call of "Da" carried across the morning air. The pistol drooped. Sarah saw the moment William's rage cracked, showing the broken man beneath. His hands shook harder. The chains slipped, striking the ground with a dull clank. "She calls him father," William whispered. "My daughter." "She calls him father because he has earned that name," Sarah said, with gentleness, with protection, with love that asks nothing in return. "And what am I?" William's voice was small now. "What have I earned?" "Choice," Standing Bear said. "Same as them. Choose better path, break chains you carry inside." The morning sun caught the fallen manacles, their metal dark against the earth. William stared at them, as if seeing them truly for the first time. The pistol lowered completely. "I could shoot you both," he said, but the words held no force. "Could take them back." "Could," Standing Bear agreed, "but would change nothing. Love and trust, like water, cannot hold with tight fist, only open hands. Sarah stepped forward, keeping her movements gentle. You're sick, William. The drink, the rage, they're killing you. Go home, heal yourself. Find a better way to live. Without you, without chains, she corrected, without trying to own other souls. William's shoulders sagged. The pistol fell beside the manacles. In the growing light, Sarah saw tears on his cheeks. I don't know how, he whispered. Standing Bear moved slowly, picking up both weapons. With deliberate care, he separated the pistol's parts, letting them fall. Then he took the chains and, with a strength that made William flinch, broke their links one by one. Each break a choice, Standing Bear said. Choose peace over violence, freedom over control, life over slow death of hate. Emma's voice came. Again, a happy stream of mixed Lakota and English as she played. The sound seemed to pierce William's last defenses. She sounds happy. She is happy, Sarah said softly. We all are. Let that be enough. William stood silent for a long moment, looking at the broken chains, the dismantled pistol, the peaceful camp where his daughter's laughter rang free. Finally, he straightened his shoulders. The divorce papers, he said. I'll sign them. Send them through the territory court. He met Sarah's eyes. You'll never see me again. Thank you, Sarah whispered. William turned away, then paused. Tell her. Tell Emma I hope she stays happy. They watched him walk away, his steps unsteady but his back straight. When he disappeared into the morning mist, Sarah knelt and touched. The broken chains. It's really over, she breathed. Standing Bear lifted her up, kissing her tears away. Was over long ago, this just last chain breaking. Together they gathered the broken links, later to be reforged into tools for their new life. As they walked back to their daughter, Sarah felt the last weight lift from her heart. They were free, all of them, even William, to choose their own paths forward. The Thunder Bay settlement welcomed them as spring melted into summer. Their new home took shape on a gentle rise overlooking the lake. Not quite a traditional lodge, not quite a settler's cabin, but something uniquely their own. Standing Bear had designed it with both cultures in mind, and Sarah marveled at how naturally the elements blended. The main room centered around a traditional fire pit, but above it hung the cast iron cooking pot Sarah had traded for with French merchants. Lakota winter counts decorated walls, finished with European-style wooden planks. Their wedding blanket hung in a place of honor, its blended designs echoing the home's dual nature. Like us, Standing Bear said, watching Emma explore. The new space. Not one thing or other, both. Better. The settlement itself reflected this harmony. Lakota families lived alongside French traders and other mixed couples who had found their way north to freedom. Children played together, switching easily between languages, their games combining elements of all their cultures. Sarah stood in the doorway of their home, watching Emma help Standing Bear set up the summer garden. They were planting in both ways, traditional Three Sisters mounds alongside neat European rows. Emma solemnly placed corn seeds in each mound, counting in both languages. 1, 2, 3, Wang Ji, Nu Ng Pia, Yamni. She speaks better than me now, Sarah said as Singing Crow joined her. The elder woman had made the journey north with them, unwilling to be parted from her adopted family. Speaks with whole heart, Singing Crow corrected. No divisions, no walls, good medicine for future. Inside, Sarah had created a teaching space where she held English lessons for local children. Standing Bear carved traditional stories into the walls around it, ensuring neither heritage would be forgotten. Between lessons, she was learning to be a healer, combining Singing Crow's medicine ways with the medical knowledge she'd brought from her old life. Their home became a gathering place, its unique design drawing curiosity that turned to understanding. French traders learned to sit in respectful silence during Lakota ceremonies. Lakota children practiced their English letters beside the fire pit. Every meal shared was a blend of traditions. "We're building something new," Sarah realized one evening, watching Standing Bear teach a French trader's son to carve while Emma played with a Lakota girl nearby. "Something that's never existed before." Standing Bear nodded, adding another symbol to the story wall he was creating. Like stream joining river, both waters flow together, make new path. The story wall was their home's heart, growing daily as Standing Bear carved their journey. There was Sarah's flight through the snow, Emma's first steps, their wedding ceremony. But there were also new stories being added. Emma's first successful hunt for berries, the raising of their home, the first harvest from their blended garden. "Should add today," Standing Bear said, touching a blank space on the wall. "First time Emma translate for new family." He smiled proudly. Bridge builder, like her mother. Sarah remembered that morning, a newly arrived settler family, lost and afraid. And Emma confidently switching between languages to help them understand the trading post system. At 4 years old, their daughter moved effortlessly between worlds that had once seemed impossibly far apart. Their home's design inspired others. Soon, more buildings in the settlement began incorporating elements of both cultures. The trading post added a ceremonial space. The community gathering hall gained both a traditional fire pit and a European hearth. "See," Singing Crow said, watching the changes, "good medicine spreads, hearts open, minds learn." As summer deepened, their garden flourished, European vegetables twining with traditional plants, creating new combinations. Like their home, like their family, like the community growing around them, it was stronger for its diversity. Each evening, they gathered on the porch that wrapped their home like embracing arms. Standing Bear would carve new stories into the walls while Sarah taught Emma to read from both books and winter counts. The lake breeze carried the scent of sage and roses, of pine smoke and fresh bread, all the fragrances of their blended life. "Home good," Emma declared one such evening, curled between them as the sun set. "All people's good." Standing Bear and Sarah shared a look over their daughter's head. This was their true legacy, not just the physical structure they'd built, but the bridge their love had created between worlds. Their home stood as living proof that divisions could be healed, that love could build something stronger than walls of hatred and fear. Sarah sat at the writing desk Standing Bear had crafted for her, carefully opening the leather-bound journal that had become their family's living history. 1 year had passed since they'd built their home, and the pages were thick with memories, pressed flowers, and the stories of lives transformed. She dipped her pen and began to write. "Today we welcomed another family seeking sanctuary. Like us, they crossed boundaries of culture and custom to find love. Like us, they needed a place where their hearts could beat freely." The new family had arrived at dawn. A Cree warrior and his Irish wife, their twin boys wide-eyed with wonder at the settlement's easy mixing of peoples. Standing Bear had recognized the look in the warrior's eyes, the protective stance, the hope mixed with wariness. It was the same way he had once stood with Sarah and Emma. "Some say we're building a new tribe here," she wrote. "Not of blood or race, but of shared dreams. Each family that finds us brings their own gifts, their own stories to add to our walls." Emma burst in, her dark curls wild from play. At 5, she had become the settlement's unofficial welcomer, helping new children find their place in this unique community. "Ma, the new boys know stories we don't, about selkies and water spirits." She bounced with excitement. "Da says we should add their stories to our wall." Sarah smiled, noting how naturally Emma wove between cultures, gathering stories like precious stones. In the journal's margins, she sketched her daughter's bright face, adding another moment to their family's record. Outside, Standing Bear was teaching the Cree warrior and other men how to incorporate both traditional and European building techniques into their homes. Their settlement had grown to 30 families, each house a unique blend of styles and traditions. The journal held proof of their influence. Letters from other settlements requesting guidance, sketches of their building designs, recipes that merged different cooking traditions. Sarah had even documented the healing practices she'd developed with Singing Crow, combining traditional medicine with modern knowledge. The old ones say change is like a river, she wrote. It can tear down or nourish, depending on how we shape its course. Here we've learned to guide change with wisdom from all our peoples. She pressed a new flower between the pages. A hybrid rose, Singing Crow had cultivated, blending wild prairie roses with European varieties. Like their community, it was stronger and more beautiful for its mixed heritage. The journal recorded Emma's growth too, her first words in 3 languages, her natural diplomacy among the settlement's children, her proud mastery of both traditional skills and reading. Through her, they saw the future they were building. Today, Emma asked why. Some people build walls between their hearts, Sarah wrote. Standing Bear told her that fear builds walls, but love builds bridges. She thought about this, then said, "We should teach them not to be afraid." Such wisdom from one so young. Standing Bear entered quietly, reading over her shoulder as she wrote. His hand rested on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort and connection that had become as natural as breathing. "Good medicine," he said, touching the journal's pages. "Words have power. These words will help others find their way." Sarah nodded. Already, copies of their story had spread south, passed hand to hand among those who needed hope. Their journal had become a map for others seeking freedom to love across boundaries. "Writing about the new family?" he asked. "And about us. About how far we've come." She showed him the sketch of Emma. "About the future we're growing here." Standing Bear smiled, adding his own mark to the page. A small drawing of a white buffalo, their eternal symbol of blessed change. "Future is Emma," he said, "and all children like her. They not see boundaries we made, see only hearts." As if summoned, Emma's voice carried through the window, teaching the new boys a game that mixed stickball with European chess. Their laughter rose pure and free, needing no translation. Sarah added one final line to the day's entry. "Love speaks its own language. Our task is simply to listen, to learn, and to pass on the story of how bridges can be built between any hearts brave enough to try." She closed the journal gently, adding it to the growing volumes that chronicled their journey. Each book was a testament to possibility, a guide for others yet to come, a legacy of love's power to transform the world. Winter winds swept across Thunder Bay as Sarah labored to bring their second child into the world. The mixed heritage cradle stood ready, a masterpiece Standing Bear had spent months creating, combining the traditional cradleboard's practical design with the European rocking cradle's gentle motion. Emma, now 6, sat beside her father near the fire, helping him add the final touches to the cradle. Her small hands traced the designs, Lakota protection symbols flowing into carved roses, Celtic knots merging with prairie grass patterns. Like the child it would hold, the cradle was a bridge between worlds. "Your brother or sister comes soon," Standing Bear told her, his voice steady despite his worried glances toward the birthing room. "First child born to our new people." Inside the bedroom, Singing Crow and Sarah's closest friend, Marie, a French trader's wife, helped with the birth. Their mixed medicines and shared wisdom had guided many such moments in the settlement, but this one held special significance. "Push now," Singing Crow commanded in Lakota, while Marie echoed in French, their voices twining together like braided sweetgrass. Sarah bore down, feeling the strength of all the women who had come before her. The baby's first cry rang out just as dawn touched the horizon. A boy, strong and healthy, with skin that held both his parents' shades, eyes that seemed to contain all the wisdom of their mixed heritage. "Thomas," Sarah whispered, honoring Standing Bear's birth name. "Thomas Wanbli, eagle in Lakota for the creature that soared above all boundaries." Standing Bear and Emma entered quietly, their faces glowing with joy. The girl immediately climbed onto the bed, peering at her brother with wonder. "He looks like both of you," she declared. "Like me, like future." Standing Bear agreed, lifting their son into the cradle's embrace. The baby settled immediately, soothed by its gentle rocking and familiar design. Sarah watched her family through happy tears. This moment seemed impossible 2 years ago, when she'd fled into the winter wilderness with only Emma and desperate hope. Now she had a home that bridged cultures, a community that celebrated differences, and a love that proved barriers were meant to be crossed. The settlement had grown to include 50 families, each adding their own threads to the tapestry of their shared life. Their story had spread far, inspiring others to create similar havens of acceptance and understanding. The mixed heritage cradle itself had become a tradition, with new parents incorporating elements of their various cultures into each design. Emma leaned over the cradle, singing a lullaby that blended Lakota words with an Irish melody she'd learned from their neighbors. Thomas's eyes fixed on his sister's face, tiny fingers reaching up to touch her cheek. "He knows his protector," Standing Bear said proudly. "Strong spirits, these two, free spirits." Sarah touched the cradle's smooth wood, feeling the love carved into every line. "This is what we were meant to build," she said softly. "Not just a home or a settlement, but a new way of seeing each other, a new way of loving." Through the window, she could see other families beginning their day. Children of all backgrounds played together in the fresh snow. Women gathered for shared work, their different languages mixing easily. Men of various tribes and nations worked side by side, learning from each other's strengths. Standing Bear lifted Thomas from the cradle, bringing him to Sarah's arms. "Full circle," he said, "from winter flight to winter blessing. From fear to love, from alone to family." Emma snuggled close, careful of her new brother. "Tell him our story, Ma, about how you and Da found each other, about how we made this place." Sarah smiled, remembering all the times she'd told their tale. Each telling was a reminder of love's power to transform, to heal, to build bridges across any divide. "Once," she began, her voice soft as falling snow, "there was a woman who thought she was trapped forever. But she discovered that love is stronger than fear, that family is something you choose, and that the bravest journey is the one that leads you home." Thomas drifted to sleep as she spoke, his peaceful breaths joining the gentle creak of the cradle, the whisper of wind, and the steady rhythms of their blended life. Outside, the sun rose fully on their settlement of bridge builders and boundary crossers, dream weavers and peacemakers. Their story would continue through their children, through the mixed heritage cradles that would hold future generations, through every life touched by the simple truth that love knows no borders. It was a legacy of hope, written in the language of the heart, speaking to all who dared to dream of a world without walls.